Well, good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Wendell Town Board of Commissioners. Happy to have you all tonight. Got a nice group here tonight. Our Pledge of Allegiance is going to be led by Tamara Sims, come to the podium, who is a student at Wendell Middle School. It gives me great pride to be able to share with you a phenomenal member of the Wendell Middle family, 7th grade scholar Tamara Renee Sims. Tamara's story is one of resilience, ambition, and tremendous growth. She's faced some challenges in her life, but has faced them courageously and continues to grow into a strong, intelligent young woman her teachers know her to be. Academically, Tamara has had significant growth, not limited to just grades. Some of her most important strides have come in the form of conduct and leadership among her peers. She's become confident in advocating for herself when she needs help. She channels her emotions in productive ways and has informally mentored other students, particularly those in the 6th grade. She has participated in and helped facilitate some restorative justice circles at Wendell Middle School as well. One of Tamara's most important qualities is her ability to learn from past experiences while gracefully thriving in spite of them. Tamara is a strong and brilliant young lady and continues to make her family, her school, and her community proud. Wow, well done. Tamara's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for being here with us tonight. Now it's time for our invocation for the Wendell Council of Churches from Wendell Baptist Church. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for allowing me to be here, and just to give a couple of updates on some things going on with our Council of Churches. We had a community egg hunt this past Saturday, which was well attended, and I don't know what the number was, but it was a huge crowd. A lot of kids,
huge.
A lot of eggs, a lot of candy. Yeah. So a sugar high all throughout the community for sure. And also we took up 425 food bags with the food drive from our community, and considering the weather especially, we were really, really pleased with that. And so we definitely say thank you to the community for continuing to support that, and it just helps so many families across our community. A couple of upcoming things as well is this coming Saturday, Wendell Baptist has what's called Operation Inasmuch, where we do various mission projects in our church and across our community, including a blood drive, which will be from 8:30 to 12:30 at our church. And so we invite anyone to come out for that. And also, if there's ever a needs in the community that you think our churches might help with, we'd love to hear from anyone in the community. Can share that with us. That might be a part of something we'll take on the next time around. And then in May, the first Thursday in May is the National Day of Prayer. So at 12 o'clock at the town square, there'll be a prayer gathering. And then that evening at 7:15 at Wendell Community Center. And we want to invite and welcome everybody to come and be a part of that as well. Let me pray for us. God, thank you for life. Thank you for the beautiful day. The seasons, as they change, just show us the beauty of your creation. Thank you for the diversity of our community, the strength of our community, and thank you for our leadership and all those who are here this evening. We pray that you will continue to give us the wisdom we need, the creativity, the passion we need for the things that you put on our heart to pursue and do together as a community. And we pray that in all things that we'll acknowledge you, we'll thank you, and we'll give you the glory because of how many blessings and gifts you give us each and every day. And we pray that this meeting will be one that blesses the community, blesses all those who are here as well as those who live throughout this community. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you again for being with us tonight. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make an adjustment. I'd like to pull item 3C out from the consent agenda and just make it item 5.
Okay.
And with that change, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
So your motion is to approve the agenda after removing 3C out, and we'll make it number 5 since it needs to come before 5A.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, public comment period. We have several people signed up for public comment tonight, so I'm gonna go through our instructions a little bit real quickly. You're limited to 3 minutes or less. If you look at the podium, the light will be green. When you're about to run out of time, it's yellow. When it's red, you gotta stop, and if not, I will stop you. So you have to stop, because you just have 3 minutes. Our first person signed up is William Gully.
Good afternoon, good evening. I'm Mary Webb. I represent the petitioner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an attorney from Ragsdale Liggett, and Mr. Gallette's going to present.
Gillette, I apologize, okay.
I just want to introduce myself.
Okay.
And just want to remind the board that this is a conditional use approval for multifamily housing. The permit's already, the zoning has already been approved. We'd like to remind the board with respect to testimony that may be offered as rebuttal. And we'd like to remind them what the statute says with respect to lay witnesses and what they can and can't offer. And I can present that at the end of our evidence or at the end of their evidence. But just would like to remind the board that lay witness testimony is not allowed. And we have expert testimony from our engineer, Mr. Dean, that we will be presenting in addition to Mr. Gillette.
The zoning has not been approved yet, and your opportunity to do those things would probably be better to be held
Sure.
for that time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I just want to let you know what my role was and what we're going to present.
Okay.
Thank you.
The clock's still running, though.
Thank you.
I've spoke with staff, and it seems more appropriate that we talk during the public hearing
Yes.
on that, so I'll recuse myself from this portion of it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kathy Dare. Dara.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Dara. I live at 3512 Coach Lantern Avenue in Wake Forest. We own several businesses here. You all know me. I have big mouth. So, again, sorry, thank you, David. My comments here are about what was 3C and 5A.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd like to quickly read something that I wrote. My first issue with the rezoning of the 17 acres is that one of the things I constantly hear is that we need to bring more industry to Wendell. I hear that from a lot of different people, from community, because industry brings jobs, jobs bring people, people interested in employment. By changing that property from industry to the CMX to turn it into something other than industry, we are in fact doing away with another parcel of land that can build our community and our economic standard. I have been told that there is a concern with manufacturing or industry that could possibly have trucks coming in and out of the main road, but I would suggest that if we rezone, what we are in fact opening up the door could be worse in the future. And again, hypothetically, because I guess we're not on 5A yet, if an apartment complex was to come in, we're talking about possibly 150 to 200 vehicles in and out of that neighborhood, that single road, constantly. So the impact, where am I? That would have much more of a road impact, not to mention the negative environmental impact. So again, our concern is to continue to move our town forward, both economically and socially. So we need to consider that changing that parcel of land, when there's other parcels of land, that building the same type of apartment complex can already be approved. So by changing over a parcel of land that is not approved for it, we're adding to that. Again, I had emailed the town, and I'm assuming that you guys got it. If not, I do have copies. This is the Census, United States Census Bureau. This was taken off of their website.
Watch your time.
Oh, okay. And they have Wendell being, the poverty level in Wendell being 18.3, which is a point higher than what Zebulon is, and it's 3 times higher than Knightdale, Rollsville, Wake Forest. So this is something that, you know, we need to consider. There's many issues with 5A. 84, where am I? Okay, yeah. The
I'm
section.
sorry, your time's up, Ms.
It's
Sarah.
time's up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Tyler, Askew.
Madam Chair, I didn't receive whatever Ms. Dare was speaking of.
We all received it by email today.
I did not receive it, so
Okay.
she said she had a paper copy.
If I may, staff received an email request from Ms. Dare to print off Census Bureau material for you. I chose not to print that off. When you're considering a special use permit, you know, you heard from the attorney last time, and I'm reinforcing, housing, affordable housing and economic status are not a permissible consideration in making that land use decision on 5A. That specific use is one use on a table of uses for rezoning. So ethically, I did not want to lead you to a conversation that would put you in jeopardy of talking about something that would either be discriminatory or illegal. And if the attorney wants to add anything to that, welcome to. But if you want to point at anybody for why you don't have it in front of you, it's me.
Understood.
Good. My name is Tyler Askew. I live on 839 Industrial Drive here in Wendell. And I sent you all an email last night. Did y'all receive, commissioners, you received my email I sent? Our biggest concern is the Church Street access point. That is a narrow road, quiet neighborhood, full of nice, friendly people. It is on the other side of a blind hill. If you have a lot of traffic entering and exiting that property from that point, I see some major safety concerns from that. Also, I feel like with the other project going on across the cemetery from this project, right down the road within a quarter mile, we really need to see how this works out. There's residential development going on there, 49 homes. I'd love to keep this M&I, keep it industrial, maybe bring some jobs, give people some places to work close by home. I drive to Wilson every day. My wife drives to the other side of Raleigh to work. I'd love to have some places here, industrial, manufacturing, whatever we can get for some decent jobs. And maybe, you know, nice residential stuff will follow, but let's let this first project on the other side of the cemetery get done, and then we can revisit this, and hopefully in the meantime leave this zoned manufacturing and industrial. And hopefully if manufacturing would come to town, they could find a way to purchase the front part of this property and exit directly on Wendell Boulevard and have clean access straight to the highway right out of town, and not have to come by the cemetery, come by our homes for entrance and exit. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Connell Herndon.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Connell Herndon. I'm at 230 Church. I was here at the last meeting, and as I say, being a resident in that area, I was born and raised, been there over 60 years, like I mentioned. The real concern, as everyone else has said, the access, the traffic that's going to be coming in and out of there. And like I say, I'm born and raised. I've been here close to 60 years. And I'm like everybody else. Let's get some jobs in here. Let's bring some industry in. We already have some industry down the street anyway. There are a number of businesses. Douglas, the sign place. We got a few things. Actually, I used to work at the place where Douglas is at many years ago. So it'd be nice to get some industry in here. That being said, my concern is let's maintain what we have. Let's maintain what we have, manufacturing industrial. You know, I understand about the CMX, but we need some other things in here. Like I say, most of the residents I know have been involved with those residents for over 60 years. We enjoy the nice, quiet, tranquil peace that we have coming down our street. As speakers before me, they've already told you, that street is not designed for that kind of traffic. They will come in and out of there with a multifamily unit apartment complex. Like the young lady said, you're talking maybe close to 170 different cars, possibly 200 cars coming in and out of there. like Mr. Askew mentioned. There needs to be some stuff looked at just the streets that are currently there. The roads in bad shape, some blind spots coming in and out there, turning out of church into industrial. So again, I'd just like to say, I appreciate you guys looking at this thing and realistically saying, hey, it needs to maintain manufacturing industry. It's one thing when you've lived here a long time and you've seen how this town has been a long time and you enjoy a quiet place. I'm all for progress. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for progress. But let's make good use of this land and get some jobs in here. Okay? Thank you so much. And again, I invite you, come on over to my street. I've looked for all last week or two. Nobody came by. Had some tea, had some lemonade ready, cleaned the deck off. But come and let's sit down and just take a peek. I love my deer out there in the fields. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Mary Webb. Okay. Kevin Doan. Okay. Geraldine Herndon.
Good evening. My name is Geraldine Herndon, and I am a property owner there at 230 Church Street. Concerning this project, thinking of an 84 built-in apartment there, I think would be not the right thing to put there. I would rather for the property to be zoned as it is. Because of jobs and things that do need to come into the town of Wendell, I think it would be a more eventful thing that if we left the property zone the way it is instead of exchanging it for CMX. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Anitra Wiggins.
Good evening. I didn't prepare a speech. I didn't actually plan to get up here, but I am the owner of the property and house at 215 Church Street. I'm actually a resident of Nightdale. However, I grew up in Wendell and I grew up at that location. And I agree with the Herndons as well as the Askews as it relates to changing the zoning of the property. I'm a bit fearful, as Connell said, that if you open it up to an apartment complex or something that would have the heavy traffic, as he stated, the road is tiny. It's not wide enough. The properties are wider than they are deeper. So even with an easement, you're going to cut off half of someone's property trying to widen out the road to make room for all of that traffic. So again, I know it's at your pleasure, but would like to just put it out there that this resident and former resident of Wendell would like to leave that street nice and quiet, and if we could leave it as industrial, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 4A is the recognition of Wendell Middle School teacher Michael Howes. If you could come stand at the podium for me, sir. Mr. Howes has a Bachelor of Science degree in Physical Education and Health from James Madison University. After graduation, he had a tryout with the New York Jets. In fact, there were a couple of stops along the way, including another tryout with the Washington Redskins. He began his career teaching elementary school in Orange, Virginia, and eventually moved to our area to be on the staff that opened Wendell Middle School. At Wendell Middle, Coach Howes has been a jack of all trades. He's been the athletic director on 2 separate occasions and has coached in almost every sport. This winter, he started an intramural soccer program that was a huge success as he consistently had over 25 students stay after school to play soccer in very cold weather. Coach Howes is the morning greeter at the bus loop, and he ensures that every student gets a handshake and a good morning as they depart their bus. Coach Howes takes great interest in the students at Wendell Middle School and is a preacher of excellent character that models all we want our students to be. His message to students is to do the right thing, and he inspires those around him. Coach Howes will enter retirement in June, and the community will surely miss him. He has spent his entire career working to make the lives of children better. His constant smile and outgoing character is contagious. If you are between the ages of 11 and 25 in our area, there's a good chance that you know Coach Howes. He has enriched our community, and we wish him a long and enjoyable retirement. He has earned it. Well, thank you very much for everything that you've done for students at Wendell Middle School and for the kids of Wendell. We just wanted to have you here tonight and recognize you and thank you for that.
Can I thank anybody?
You can do whatever you'd like. You have the floor.
Do I have 3 minutes?
You have as much time as you want. You aren't limited, actually. You can talk all you want.
Well, I won't, because there's a big hockey game tonight.
There is that.
But I do hear the concerns of the people here saying that want to bring more industry and jobs, and I just want you to know there will be one job open.
At Wendell Middle School.
At Wendell. But I do want to thank my administrators. They have been wonderful for 12 years. A lot of teachers can't always say that their administrators have been wonderful and helped them. I think at times, at my age, I've had to reinvent myself, especially when we started that dance unit at school. But I just want to thank all the teachers at school, and of course, all the children that have come through. I have really missed a lot of the parents. You really get close to parents when you're the athletic director and you're driving the bus and taking the children to the games and trying to keep them safe and everything. But I do want to give a special thanks out to the Wendell Community Center, because starting our school, we didn't have an athletic field to play our baseball games, and they were generous to go ahead and let us do that. And it was a wonderful thing coming 30 years from Virginia and coming down here and working another 12 years. And I had to pretty much convince myself this year that I should probably be stepping down. But I think as you get older, you need to let some of the younger teachers take control and take some responsibilities and stuff. And it's been real fun seeing our younger teachers take that. So, my wife and I did build a home here. We live in Wendell, the Foxborough Crossing, and we absolutely love it. So, and thank you very much for this recognition this evening.
You're very
And
welcome.
the coin, and the
You're
coin.
very welcome.
Thank you.
Item 4B is the introduction of a new town Wendell employee, our town clerk, Megan Howard.
Thank you.
We're going to hear from the town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Megan Howard has joined the town of Wendell, so as one distinguished career ends, a new one is starting in the town of Wendell. And she joined the town on Friday, April 12th. Megan is a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill with a degree in communications. So NC State grads, I apologize, but yeah, but basketball season will come around, and I know David, a fellow Carolina graduate, appreciated another Carolina grad joining our staff. Prior to joining the town, Megan was in PR and marketing as an assistant with the Asheville Convention and Visitors Bureau. She also has experience with Indy Week as a news reporter. So one of the things that we saw was a very strong communication background, adding to our abilities on staff there. Megan's hit the ground running. She's working on the Citizen Advisory Board recruitment. She also has an eye for photography, and we're looking forward to photos for our town's website and social media sites. And I saw a couple from the Easter celebration today that were phenomenal. So thanks for all that you're doing. And
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to serving you all.
Welcome, Megan, we're happy to have you. All right, now we're going to go into item 3C that we moved from the consent agenda. It's a zoning map amendment request to rezone 17 acres located at 0 Wendell Boulevard, PIN number 1784326835. Mr. Bergmark?
I can bring up the past PowerPoint if I need to, but just a really brief recap. Again, this is 17 acres located off of Church Street behind Industrial Drive. The request is to rezone it from manufacturing and industrial, its current designation, to corridor mixed use, or CMX, which is one of our commercial use designations. This would be considered somewhat of a down zone in that there are more intense uses allowed in the M&I than there are in the CMX, but it does open up a broader range of uses that are allowed in the CMX. The planning board did vote unanimously in favor of the proposed rezoning request, and staff, looking at plan consistency and reasonableness, did find it to be consistent with our comprehensive plan, and was in favor of the request. I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have related to this.
Right. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Bergmark on the board?
David, I had just wanted to pull this out myself, and at the last meeting we had, I had voted in opposition to this rezoning request due to the effect that I feel like it would have on some of the citizens we have in this town and the homeowners, and so I still feel that way after 2 weeks, and so I just want to make sure that I had a chance just to kind of vote in opposition to that again. So that was all.
I have a question. Under the table of permitted uses for manufacturing industrial, would something like a ready-mix concrete plant be allowed?
Yes, pretty much any kind of industrial or manufacturing facility whatsoever would be permitted. There is no type of heavier industrial, any type of industrial would be permitted of any type.
So short of a nuclear power plant, basically?
I mean, it would still be subject to any other state regulations that may apply, but otherwise, yes, any type.
So Dave, just to follow up on that, with the current zoning, that particular piece of parcel, if it was not downgraded on the zoning and an industrial facility went in there, would Church Street be the access point as it currently sits?
It could be, is a short answer. Of course, you'd have to see what development plan came in line. Currently, we do not have any standards that would require another access point. We have stub requirements, meaning you might have to stub to adjacent property, but it doesn't mean you have to connect all the way to another street. Let me also caveat that with, depending on how many trips this proposed industrial or manufacturing use might have, it could trigger a TIA, which could call for a secondary access point. But just off the bat, would it be required for any given manufacturing? No, they could potentially use Church Street.
And I do want to clarify, we talked about this in the last meeting, but there's no other easements. I mean, there's no plans to widen Church Street or take away from any of those property owners, correct?
There are no such plans.
Okay.
David, aren't there a handful of other M&I uses right along in there?
There are a few,
Douglas
yeah, there are a
Fabrication.
few along Industrial Drive currently. Yes, ma'am.
Currently, so that the way it is zoned right now is consistent with a lot of what's around it.
Yes, I wouldn't say the current zoning is inconsistent with surrounding zoning districts.
I just don't like everybody, I don't like the concept of the what-ifs and creating this horrible, short of a nuclear plant possibility there. If you want to play what-ifs, more than likely it would be something very similar to what's already there that would come there, that would add, I don't know, a dozen jobs and be not much of an imposition on the area and very consistent with what's already there, in my opinion. So I don't like the idea of the what-ifs of this horrible boogeyman manufacturing company that's going to have bright lights and loud noise 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I just don't, that's not going to happen. Are there any other comments or questions for Mr. Bergmark?
Nothing for Mr. Bergmark. I'll say that The what if game is literally the game that's been played specifically with this community for going back at least 4 years, when they were gonna bring in, right before I got on the board, really small houses to that area, and they said no to small houses, then it was something else, now it's this, and in government and in an economy that is moving the way that this economy is moving, I think you do have to play what ifs, and if the community is saying, we want the community to stay closer to a neighborhood center, well, then CMX is the next step down from industrial by right. We wouldn't get the vote. It's sort of like the Hardys that everyone's seen is going up on the other side. The reason that you never saw a vote for this board for that is because it's by right. They didn't have to come to us. It was a by right use. So they just went straight up, and there's no input feedback. So for that reason, I'll make a motion, as I did last time, to approve the rezoning request so that we can get to the substance of the next portion. But I'd make a motion that we approve the rezoning request.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the rezoning request. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I have some discussion on the motion.
Yeah.
This is a little bit, first I'd like to apologize to everybody for my inability to be at the last meeting. I wish I could have been, and we might be a little further along if that was the case. But this is a little bit confusing to me. Most of the time when rezoning comes up, it's when someone wants to rezone something to allow more uses or quote-unquote heavier use than what's currently allowed. This is a more restrictive use. Right now it is zone manufacturing and industrial. It abuts, the map I'm looking at, it abuts basically 2 parcels that are also manufacturing industrial. One of them doesn't have anything on it, and the other one has a, I believe that's a propane plant. But the other side of it is CMX, and I believe that's going to be RA on the east side. Is that right?
Yes.
And so it's not like it's going to be an island in the middle of the manufacturing and industrial. Honestly, if a user came in and wanted to put in something that fit into the MI zoning, I feel like we'd be getting backlash about it. I think about, everybody says we want to bring more jobs. I agree with that. I look at some of the uses that have been put in things like that, like AAA louvers being built back there off Chart House Drive. The Wendell Builder Supply, those create, I watch the trucks come and go, those create way more trips with way more heavy trucks than residential ever would, whether it's houses or apartments or anything else. And if their only access is Church Street, then it's going to be heavy trucks and cement trucks and whatever. And I realize that that's not what's happening now, and no one said that's what's going to happen. But it's just a little bit confusing to me, the pushback when so many varied uses could be on this property, and we're taking it to something quiet or something residential. I don't particularly understand that. I do understand the concern about traffic. I do understand the concern about neighborhoods and things like that. And at this stage, we're not allowed to, or perhaps we're not allowed to talk about what if someone has put up fourth plans or something like that, or we're not allowed to talk about certain things. But just taking it from the bird's eye view, I'm surprised it hasn't been moved to a more restrictive sooner, honestly. Moved away from MI to CMX sooner to sort of take off some of these uses that I wouldn't be happy if it was being built right next to my house. I wouldn't be happy with metal fabrication, and I seem to remember there was a discussion mere weeks ago about metal fabrication happening in town, and so that's why it's a little bit confusing to me. I understand people's hesitancy about change, but this is a more restrictive use, and it's going to, in my opinion, would limit disruption. In the long run, I realize in the short term, it doesn't seem that way because we're talking about something that's open fields and woodlands being converted to something that's not open fields and woodlands. But in the grand scheme of things, I think this is, I don't really see the problem with changing this to CMX.
Any other discussion on the motion? All right. All in favor? Anyone opposed?
Aye.
All right. Item 5A is an evidentiary hearing on a special use request by James Harold III on behalf of Wendell LaRue LLC for a two-story, 84-unit apartment complex at 0 Wendell Boulevard. Mr. Bergmark?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. As stated, this is a public hearing request for a special use permit regarding the 84-unit apartment complex. I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and have everyone swear in so I can include myself.
Okay, let's let the attorney also go through the rules of procedure for evidentiary hearing while we're getting everybody together to swear them in.
Excellent.
So, Mr. Hawley?
Mayor and Commissioners, as you know, these proceedings are called quasi-judicial proceedings. They are more in the nature of a court hearing than in the nature of a legislative rezoning. Testimony is sworn, has to be, your decision has to be supported by competent evidence, and the statute provides competent evidence does not include opinion testimony of lay witnesses regarding property valuation or traffic or matters that would generally be the subject of expert testimony. There is an opportunity for cross-examination of witnesses. If you've been lobbied or contacted ex parte, that should be disclosed. The applicant and those opposed are entitled to a fair and impartial decision maker. So everyone needs to proceed with an open mind.
So I assume I've received some emails, and I believe one was mentioned earlier. I've received 2 emails regarding this.
The question becomes whether those have caused you to form an opinion or whether you can proceed with the hearing with an open mind.
All right. Thank you. I'm just letting you know I've received them. Okay.
Phone calls, but nothing that would persuade me from the board with an open mind. I received phone calls, but can also proceed with an open mind.
Same here. I received phone calls and I let the person know that I couldn't talk about it.
And I've received 2 emails and it won't have any effect in my opinion.
And those who are either in favor or opposed to the application would have an opportunity to ask you about any of those contacts if desired.
Okay. All right, anyone wishing to present testimony or needs to be sworn in, so step up here and be sworn in, please.
If you plan to speak and provide testimony, you need to come forward now, maybe or possibly.
Can I ask a question real quick? I want to make sure I understood. Now, if I'm here to share my concerns, I can't talk. Or you said that I had to have like documentation or whatever of my issues tonight?
Why don't you plan to talk and then we'll decide?
Okay.
Yeah.
That works.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide to the board is factual and true, so help you God?
I do.
Next batch.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide to the board is factual and true, so help you God?
I do.
All right, Mr. Bergmark, proceed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as a reminder, this item was tabled from the April 8th meeting. as we proceeded with the rezoning, which required a second reading. James A. Harrell III is the applicant on behalf of Wendell LaRue LLC. Has made this request, again, for an 84-unit apartment complex behind Industrial Drive with 17-acre tract. The applicant is pursuing tax credits for this multifamily project and is seeking to obtain the necessary entitlements to apply through that tax credit program. As a result, there is a variance request. Due to the timing constraints of applying for those tax credits, the applicant is asking for a variance to allow the SUP approval in advance of the full preliminary plan being reviewed by the Technical Review Committee. And as such, they understand and agree to some stipulations as part of that special use permit approval, that it would only approve the proposed use being the multifamily apartments, the intensity in terms of the number of units, the building height, which is 2-story, and the proposed exterior building setbacks, 25 to 35 feet. So although they have a conceptual plan, all other elements of that would not be locked in by the special use permit. It would still be reviewed by the Technical Review Committee following this hearing if approved. We just went through the rezoning, so the zoning district has changed. And I think I've really covered all that in terms of the project profile. On the screen again is the current layout, which you've seen as part of the rezoning as well. Accessed off of Church Street, kind of behind Industrial and Wendell Boulevard. On your screen now is the conceptual map that they provided. Again, they included as a note on this plan that this would only be locking in those items I mentioned. So again, just the use, number of units, building height, building setbacks. But otherwise, in terms of parking or orientation or layout or where stormwater is or landscaping or lighting, all those elements, those would all be reviewed when this goes before the Technical Review Committee if the board approves the special use permit request. I mentioned tax credits. I just wanted, for information purposes, to let people know what that is. It's not public housing, but it's not necessarily market rate. There are some conditions tied to it where the rents have income requirements based on the area median income being the Wake County's income, which is 76,000. So there are thresholds that certain percentages of units can't exceed 30% of that Wake County income. So, for example, on this request, 25% of the units can't be more than 30% of the Wake County income, 40% can't be more than 50% of the Wake County median income. So this works out to different permitted rents. If anything here is an error and the applicant needs to correct me, please do, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what the tax credit program really meant in general. And in terms of off-street parking, public utilities, I'll say public utility, gravity sewer lines and manholes exist on the property, water lines are nearby. In terms of off-street parking or stormwater, that would all be reviewed at the time this went before Technical Review Committee if applicable. In terms of buffering, they have proposed building setbacks, not to be confused with a landscape buffer, of 35 feet along the south property boundary, 25 feet along the western boundary, and the north and east property boundaries. So that would be one of the items that would be, if this is approved, carried as part of that approval. The south and west property lines abut residential uses and would require a type B buffer. So anywhere this parcel abuts an existing single-family dwelling use, our code would call for a type B buffer. And so that's not something that would have to be included as part of this approval. That's just part of our normal UDO standards. This area property is located within the S6 sector of our comprehensive plan, which identifies the most efficient and attractive area for infill development and redevelopment of underutilized sites. Thus, a denser residential development due to the proximity to downtown, the existing services that are in place would align with the goals of the comprehensive plan. Staff does have some concerns regarding traffic and access for this site. Currently, the parcel is only accessed by the northern extension of Church Street. UDO would require one additional street stub, but that's just stubbing to another property. It doesn't mean it's connecting to another existing street. And also, just for reference, this project would not meet our minimum threshold for a transportation impact assessment. It would not be generated in 150 peak hour trips. Thus, no TIA would be required outright by our UDO for this project. And I also want to just reference that you do have as one of your attachments the general standards for reviewing and approving a special use permit as an attachment to your report. have some slides copied for that as well that I can bring up when the time arises if you wish. That's all I have as far as my presentation. I'd be happy to take questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Burgmart?
I have one, Mayor.
Mhm.
The comment, David, about a stub street being required on the concept plan, is that shown?
Not on the concept plan.
Okay.
So that would still have to, again, that would still have to come when they do the TRC. So but they did not, that's not one of the entitlements that they are kind of laying out as a stipulation, that they only have to have the one access point. So that, as well as any other standards that aren't one of those kind of 5 things listed, would still be required at the time of technical review committee review.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, let's hear from the applicant.
Hi, my name is William Gillette. I'm at 1301 Sandpiper Court in Raleigh, and representing the development team that's put together this proposal and request to you. First, just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the site itself. We are proposing to do 84 multifamily units, mixed of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. We're talking 2-story, as David said, brick facade on the bottom, hardy plank up top with the gables. There'll be a community center there at the very beginning, coming in off of Church Street, which will house a computer room, and that's where the full-time manager and full-time maintenance person that we hire will be, and managing this facility itself 40 hours a week, and won't be working on anything else. Our company, what we do multifamily developments all around the state. We come in on the front end, as I am on the development team, trying to get everything ready, working with the towns. And then we actually hire locally, usually a manager and maintenance person that's a staff of ours under our management company that take care of the property for us for the long haul. We do have a construction company that we work with regularly as well. So we do all 3 tiers of it and maintain the properties out for their life, which is usually 30 to 35 years. And I say that just so when you're dealing with us, you're dealing with us if it's approved for the long haul. A couple of things I'd like to say. You probably ask, why are we here? I do all the upfront marketing and site selection for the development team all over the state. And it's my job to go find where there is need. We obviously don't want to be anywhere we can't lease up apartments. And this area is just, as you all know, becoming a serious, well, the population, what I'm hearing is 25% increase over the next 3 to 4 years. The apartment need here, we had an in-depth independent market study conducted by the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency that we had nothing to do with, just to ensure, they wanted to ensure with the tax credits that the need was there. There's over 1,100 units of what we are proposing needed here, and we're only proposing 84. What that calculates out to in the multifamily world is a 7% capture rate. That's as good as you're gonna see anywhere in the state. They're saying we'll lease these up in 4 to 6 months, which usually it takes 9. So the need is there. There's no question about that. We've also heard, I think from the last, some concerns, which we understand as you all change, people do not like change. So what we have proposed, and as David said, our site plan is, can be moved around and adjusted, and we heard concerns from the neighbors at the end of Church Street that they did not like the buildings and would like to see a bigger buffer. So between when this site plan that you see and today's meeting, and we've shown this to some of the residents, we've moved building F and A completely away from the end of Church Street and put it in the residual land to the right corner. And I've got, you know, revised site plans, anybody that would like to see that.
This area?
Yeah, so those two buildings would shift over, and the land in between, obviously that would make the setback off the end of Church Street go all the way up, you know, to that first building in E. We're just trying to accommodate and understand that they did not like the buildings right there at the end, so we've done that. We've worked with the town and others to also moving that building over creates that parking lot above building F will go away. And that gives a 284 feet from Google Earth, what I did, buffer between the first building and the property to the rear. All that will stay wooded. The stormwater pond would be the only thing going in there. And obviously, you have, by state regs, you have to have vegetation and aquatic wetlands, things all through there, which matches with the existing stream and the sewer line. So we feel like we've tried to alleviate some of these concerns. And then the next thing I'd like to say is, you know, we heard about traffic, and we heard about it tonight. So we were proactive and went and hired a professional engineering firm to do a TIA. And they're here tonight to present their findings, professional findings related to the traffic. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. One thing I would say, one other thing. David did bring up the AMIs, the area median incomes for tax credits. One thing that we're very happy about is for the first time with the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency this year, they are allowing what's called income averaging. And what that allows you to do is introduce 80% units into your mix. And an 80% unit, four-person AMI here could make up to $68,000 a year. So those, as he presented, he didn't have that information, so I apologize for that, but there are 80% units being put into this mix, which will raise the incomes of everything considerably. And we feel like, and the market study feels like, that hits dead middle of what is needed with the 1,200 units, hence the capture rates. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I appreciate your time.
Do you have the sketch plan that you
I
can
do.
provide?
Got copies for you.
Mr. Gillette, while he's passing those out, so you said building A and building F
Yes, sir.
are moved to where that circle is, or roughly where that circle is?
Yeah, David's handing out the revised sketch, and I think you'll see that we've moved those over. And, you know, the typical process and procedures, like David says, we come in and we understand that the TRC is going to have to review all of this. We're just committing to the neighbors and to you that we were willing to move those buildings over there, you know, now.
If there's not any other questions, we can go ahead and move to the traffic. I believe you
Okay.
said you had
Thank
some.
you for your time.
Or did you have a
I'm sorry, I
question?
have one question.
Okay, I didn't hear anyone.
No, yeah, I didn't speak, I was meant to look at that. Can you just speak to just a quick moment for me? I have a question on the, so I'm understanding this correctly. You said 20 of the units, Up to 80% of the income, is that correct?
80% of the AMI, yes, sir.
Okay, so, there's no minimum number, it's only, I mean,
That's right. The way it works is, these are not subsidized units. The only subsidy comes on the front end from the equity and the tax credits. They're run as a straight up market rate apartments. There's restriction on initial move-in. You cannot be over the certain threshold of the 80% AMI.
Okay.
After that, you can make as much money as you want to make and stay in the unit. And so that's the only requirement there are. And like I said, this is the first time they've ever done this, because people, have realized that they didn't want to be that restrictive and allow 80% units, and it's really helping.
so 20 of these units cannot be above that 80%?
On initial move-in.
Initial move-in.
Yeah.
And then the other 64 units, are they just, what's their setup? Are they just market rate, or are they?
You got, like David said, it's going to be a combination of 30, 50, 60s, and 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, but before, we weren't able to do any 80s. 60 was the max. So,
is it approximately 20 on each one units?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay.
I can get you those specific and.
That all?
That's all, yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening. My name is Kevin Dean. I'm a civil engineer with Kimley Horn and Associates, based out of Raleigh. My office is at 300 West Morgan Street in Durham. I graduated from NC State with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. I'm a professional engineer and have been doing traffic studies for about 8 years. As David mentioned, the TIA wasn't required at the site based on the trip generation. That's expected, but we have performed an assessment because we want to look at the impacts of the site and be able to answer any questions you might have. So when we did our assessment, we looked at the intersections of Wendell Boulevard at Industrial, as well as Industrial Drive at Church Street, with that being the access point. Like other traffic studies, we collect traffic counts, then we account for specific growth in the area as well as ambient growth that we'd expect. So specific growth would be the Wendell Crossing project that's currently under construction on Academy Street. So we account for the traffic that'll generate. And then we look at how traffic volumes are growing in an area, because while we don't include specific projects, we know that volumes increase as populations increase. If you look at traffic volume data on the DOT website, volumes on Wendell Boulevard have actually decreased over the last 4 to 6 years, which I would imagine has something to do with Wendell Falls Parkway being constructed and having an extra access point out to 87, 264 bypass, whatever the number is this week. But even though that's lower, we assumed a growth rate of 3% per year, which is standard in a lot of municipalities, but also make sure that it's a conservative analysis. We don't ever want to assume that traffic is going to decrease. That would be hard to defend. So we increase traffic annually for 3%, then add traffic in from the Wendell Crossings development, and then added in the site traffic that this development is expected to generate. Trip generation is done using the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. That's based on decades of research on specific land uses. It's DOT and the town standard for doing trip generation, and that's the basis for all traffic studies that are done in the state. So when we looked at that, we added all that traffic together and performed an analysis. We found that both the intersection of Wendell Boulevard at Industrial Drive and Industrial Drive at Church Street are expected to operate acceptably with this traffic in place, and there aren't any improvements that are needed to accommodate that traffic. There were questions about whether Church Street would need to be widened to accommodate the traffic volumes. We didn't find that to be the case. I know David had mentioned if there was a need for turn lanes at the intersection, that would be the primary driver for widening the road, and we found that this won't create a need for that. So with the traffic in place, we didn't see any issues with capacity or long queues, and so it is my professional opinion that this plan will not cause undue traffic congestion, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions regarding the traffic?
Church Street and Industrial and Wendell and Industrial?
Yes, sir. We assume those will be the primary access points. We know that you can access Academy, going out a little bit further, but for the traffic trying to go north on Wendell Boulevard, that's the most direct route to get out to it.
And so you account for this development, 3% growth, and the
Wendell Cross,
which is the one someone mentioned earlier this evening.
Yes, sir. On the other side of the cemetery, it's the 49-lot single-family home that's currently being graded out over off Academy.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that the applicant would like to? Okay. All right, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Or do you, okay, let's let David speak for us a minute, I'm sorry.
This isn't exactly an opposition, but a clarification of a point that was brought up during the applicant's testimony, or the applicant's agent's testimony.
Okay.
When, they handed out the updated site plan, I wanted to give a reminder to the board that the site plan itself wasn't being approved as a conceptual plan. There were specific elements of that site plan that would be approved as stated. The original plan that you had as part of your attachment had that information noted on it as a notation on the plan, while this one does not. So we would, if this were going to be taken, we would want that information added to it. And also, as it relates to the moving of buildings, the location of the buildings wasn't one of those 5 items that was going to be locked in under the current language. That could either be, there could either be language added about the location of buildings A and F, or there could be a change to the language about setbacks to increase the setback along the southern property boundary, because the setbacks were one of the items that were going to be locked in as part of the approval if it were approved.
Okay. Give us your name and address again, please.
Good evening. My name is Attorney Stefan Bowens. My office address is 1130 Citus Court, Suite 240, Raleigh, North Carolina. I am here on behalf of Ms. Geraldine Herndon tonight, who lives at 230 Church Street, as well as several other members of the community. Having said that, one of the things that I think that it is important that this particular commission consider in making a determination as it relates to whether or not to approve both the variance request and the special use permit is, number one, whether or not the applicant has met the standard with respect to hardship as it relates to the variance itself. In this case, we would argue that that the request for the variance does not meet the statutory requirement or the ordinance requirements under UDO 15.17C5C, which requires that, which specifically excludes issues of economic hardship as a basis for which to grant a variance. In this case, the petitioners or the applicants have requested a variance based on their ability to achieve tax credits. This in and of itself is not a basis for granting a variance that would allow you to move forward under your own ordinance with respect to allowing the applicant to proceed outside of the normal realm. In other words, without the applicant going first through the TRC committee and through the normal formal process that has been adopted by this board and by this body as it relates to its processes. This is not an issue of an unnecessary hardship. This is something that they have created themselves. It is not an issue of a matter that is specifically related to the land. which is one of the requirements. And I specifically direct the board and its counsel to Williams versus North Carolina Department of Environment and Natural Resources, 144 NC App 479 or 548 SE Second 793, 2001 North Carolina Court of Appeals decision, as well as Turk versus the Town of Surf City, 182 North Carolina App 427, 642 SE Second 251, 2007 decision. The hardship in this case is a hardship that is self-inflicted. And so, yes, I am a professional, and yes, I am providing evidentiary testimony as it relates to whether or not a hardship in this case is in fact in place for which this board would be authorized to hear the variance on the special use permit and on your ordinance processes. As the applicant had previously stated in his presentation, he stated that the basis for the variance was in fact the tax credits, and that would be economic benefit that would be derived down the road as it relates to the development of the property from North Carolina Housing Finance Corporation. I've dealt with North Carolina Housing Finance Corporation. I've been doing land use and zoning and development work now for more than 21 years. And again, I would say to you that this is not a variance for which the board could move forward. If it did, in fact, move forward, we would respectfully submit that the board might, in fact, be buying itself a lawsuit. And so, as it relates to that, while it's all well and good that the applicant has chosen to change the location of two primary buildings, it still does not alleviate or overcome the standard as it relates to the bases upon which a variance can be approved both by your ordinance and by statute in the state of North Carolina. As a result of that, we would respectfully ask that you deny the variance request and deny the special use permit at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you mind repeating that back, the UDO number?
Yes, it is 15.17 C5C.
Thank you.
And that one specifically precludes economic hardship as a basis for the granting of a variance. And more generally, the applicant, and again, that's just one provision of your ordinance, but the general rule is with respect to variances that there has to be something that is site-specific. This is not site-specific. It's not, the variance is not related to, for example, something unusual about the land that would cause it to technically not meet the requirements of the zoning. That's not the case here. There's nothing with respect to that. There's nothing uncommon. The only issue is, in this case, that the applicant failed to get their application in sufficient time in order to take advantage of a particular type of tax credit. Whether those tax credits would be available at another time is not germane to this argument. In fact, because of the bases that they have identified, they have not demonstrated any hardship for which this particular variance could be approved.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition?
Good evening. Regina Harmon, 6616 Tells Branch Road. I own two businesses in Wendell. Most of you up there do know me. I did reach out to several of you, only spoke to a few. I wanted to make that known right up front about the issue earlier.
that we voted on and that you did pass. To me, I couldn't separate the two, and I shared that with both of y'all, but every single one of you that spoke to me said you couldn't talk about one, you only could talk about the other because the other was not brought up yet. I wanted to make that very clear that those of you did tell me that, and I shared, thank you. You know, it's hard to understand a lot of this stuff, and as commissioners, it's a hard job up there on what you have to do to balance what's good for our town, the growth of our town, the direction we need to take, whether it's the downtown DMX that we're working on right now, or rezoning a piece of property to potentially bring in a larger number of homes to our community. With respect to the applicant and the fact that they are trying to take into consideration the individuals that live out there and the traffic study, and I appreciate that traffic study being done, and I would honestly want a second traffic study, because for those of us that live here and have driven down that road a multitude of times, can honestly say that it is a small road, it has issues coming on to Wendell Boulevard, it has issues off Church Street down Industrial, and with the development that's already there, it's gonna bring in about 50 homes, which is gonna be another 100 cars in addition to what's already there. And then on top of this, another 150 to 200 cars. That's a lot of traffic coming in and out without us doing anything to that road based on what they shared with us. I'm not saying that this guy that does this study for a living isn't correct. I'm saying it's just hard to believe with that road, and all of y'all have driven down it. And then they also wanted to move the buildings, and if I'm not mistaken, they moved it over there where the yellow's at. Well, that butts up to, that's not the property, so never mind. I was thinking that was gonna be the property where that spring is at, and that's gonna be an issue with runoff water and concern there with the development of the property. And the only testimony I can give to that is, actually, I live on Pool Road, right across from Central Baptist Church. Some X number of years ago, the church came to you guys to want to rezone that property and put in a larger building. With that being said, they put one of those things where the runoff water goes, but they put it up high, not down low. So of course, all that runoff water comes to our farm. So where we had a farm that had, a runoff ditch that was maybe a half an inch deep, we now have a 5, 10, 15-foot deep ditch in certain places. So if that property is built, making sure that any runoff water is going to go to a part where it's not going to affect the farm adjacent to it. So, but then again, the lawyer that came and spoke about all the legalities, I don't know those. I'm just up here talking to you from my heart and, what the concern is of the property over there with everybody else. So if you do vote for this, really consider those things, the traffic and, the amount of problems that we'll have with runoff as it's being built. So really, that's it. I mean, this is a frustrating job for you guys, and I do get that, and I do appreciate the hard work that you try to do, and you share with us when we call and talk to us about these issues. We don't always agree, and we're never going to do that, but at least we can have a back and forth, and that's the promising thing about our town. So you've been given testimonial today by the group that says they're willing to do whatever in order to make this right for our town. You've been given testimony from a lawyer that is against it, and he's given you very promising things to look at. So before you vote tonight, you might want to look those things up, is all I can say. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And Megan, welcome to our family. We're really excited about having you and looking forward to all you do for our community. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, to clarify, is there a 5-minute talking limit? Everybody's been within 5 minutes so far, but
Yeah, but we haven't been running the clock.
I've been keeping
Yeah,
time.
I've been kinda
Everybody's
glancing.
Within 5
Yeah.
minutes, but I just wanted to clarify in
Yeah.
case somebody spoke longer. Is
Yeah.
that the policy of the board?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's my bad.
That's okay, no.
I won't do more than 5 minutes, I promise.
Yeah, I've been writing everybody's time.
I've been
down.
kinda glancing.
Really good on your own, but in case the light came up on one, I wanted just to clarify.
I'm Kathy Dara again, I live
Yes,
at
ma'am.
3512 Coach Lantern. One of the things I would like to question, the gentleman, is that from my research on the Section 42 tax credit program, is that every year you have to recertify, and you cannot be above the limit. So you said that you can live there and make as much money as you want.
Ms. Dara,
So, has
Ms.
that
Dara,
changed? Yes.
can you speak to the board?
I'm sorry.
please? I'm
Okay.
sorry.
He said that once you move in, that only the limits are required when you move in, but then it doesn't matter what you make. And from my research, that's not the case. Every year you have to recertify. So basically, we're kind of locking it in. Do I think that we need some apartment complexes here in Wendell? I think that that would be great. I'd like to see some. I think that that's a wonderful thing to introduce people to the town. People move into apartments, then they move out of apartments, move into homes. So I think it's a great avenue. Do I think that this location is the best for it? No. I think that there's a lot of traffic, and I think that these are real concerns for people who have been living there and investing in this town with their life. My other concern is that I've heard this a couple of times from a couple of different people that are on not just this board, but along the planning board also, that they feel it's not their place to tell people what to do with their property. And my question to you then is, why do we have a board if your job is not to tell people what to do with their property? We have a coffee shop, and we have, the health department comes in twice a year, tells us what to do and how to do it. So I think that that is in the public safety, that is to be safe for the community. I think that your job is to do what's best for the community. And this community that lives there and has paid taxes and has sown into Wendell is telling you they do not want this thing. So I think that we have a responsibility to listen to the people who put us in the seats. So with that, I say thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Yes, excuse me. Yes, Commissioners, just one other quick note. Again, my name is Connell Herndon, I'm at 230 Church. And just a little bit of research, just over the last couple of sessions, some of the things that have been said, that kind of thing. Talk about the petitioner or permit, person that's putting in the petition, okay,
Right.
request. About that type. But from my understanding, we have a TRC, which is the Technical Review Committee. And they're put in place for a reason. Is that not correct? Now, this proposed engineer came up, made a comment, said they did an analysis study. He didn't provide any kind of report to you guys, to the commission. So his word is no more reliable than my word. So I already know. I lived it. I've been here over 60 years. It's already hard for me to get in and out of my street. Get up to Wendell Boulevard and leave at specific times of the morning. Like I say, I was born here. I was raised here. I see it. That's like on a job. I talk to the people that do that job because they know specifically how things go in and out. I've been a manager, supervisor from many different corporations. So I go to the people and listen to what they have to say so I can best make my area and production in my group better. And as we have stated, I'm all for progress, but just ain't quite fitting. It changes the characteristic of our community. Thank you very much.
I would also like to question the legitimacy of that traffic impact study that was done. That was done one day that I saw them last week, on a holiday week when most schools were out. They sat there where they said they sat, Church Street, sat there at the end of Industrial Drive. I personally, at about 5:15 in the afternoon, got to that intersection at Industrial and Wendell Boulevard. A song I liked came on the radio. I looked at my clock, 5:20, it was like 5:14. It's right at 5:15. 3 minutes had passed by the time I could get out there, 5 cars behind me. So in reality, the amount of vehicles traveling up and down is not important as the spacing between them, because you can't get out. We got road tractor trailers coming in. A couple of them belong to us. A lot of them are going to the businesses that are on that street. They're going to have problems getting in and out. It's already hard to get vehicles in and out as it is. Add all these other vehicles to it, we'll have problems. And I want to also reiterate that this is an 84-unit low-income apartment complex. I have here in front of me their preliminary rental tax credit application. All right, it says, Wendell Place Apartments, 14 one-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 44 two-bedroom, 2-bathroom, and 26 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom units on 15 acres. As proposed, 25% of the units will serve residents earning less than 30% of the area median income. 40% will be less than 50% of the area median income. Ultimately, 100% of the units will be affordable for those earning under 60% of the area median income. There'll also be 10 fully accessible units for impaired, disabled, or homeless populations in the area. And this would put it, as I read online, in the low to very low income housing category. All right, applicant has got the application in. This will give the applicant substantial tax credits. If you look, it is shocking how much money is to be made on low income housing. It will blow your mind. So good to the people doesn't matter. This is a money making deal right here. All right, 2018, I have that right here in front of me. Study was done. Wendell, 12.3%. And this is government subsidized. I know it says it's not government subsidized, but I want to give you all a picture of what we're dealing with. 12.3% government subsidized units. And that's 12.3% subsidized compared to other houses in Wendell. County average is 4.1. So we have a problem. And it seems like everybody's flocking here now because we're allowing this to happen. You know, we say, oh, 12.3%. Wendell Falls make it go down a little bit, but let's bring some more in. We've already got one at the end of Industrial Drive. There's one by the post office there in town. It seems like something's not adding up. We need jobs. We need nicer homes that people will be proud to live in. And I'm also concerned about the runoff from this property and the stormwater retention pond there. And these thunderstorms came through last week. The water was about a foot below the level of our dirt road leading into our farm, which means we will have problems. Asphalt doesn't hold water. Dirt does. I also have some pictures. Are y'all allowed to see pictures, or should I hold them up of Church Street Industrial Drive? I mean, this is evident. I mean, this is plain Jane stuff.
You can give them to the clerk and she'll pass them up here.
This is going to show the blind hill as you're approaching Church Street up and over. This one will show the condition of Industrial Drive, potholes. And this other one will show the width and why we were concerned about the 50-foot right-of-way on Church Street. And I'd like for y'all to look at that. But also, with this low-income housing coming in, I feel like that's just going to be a draw for more. We have, and this is factual, 49 homes being built, earshot away. We must let that happen, then reevaluate, and have a proper traffic impact analysis done over a period of time that takes a whole lot more parameters into account. And I hope that you side with us, because I feel like we've been very courteous, and we respect y'all's decision, but we also love our neighborhood. Thank y'all.
Anyone else in opposition? Okay, does the applicant want to rebut some of this?
Thank you. Just a couple of things to answer the lady's question about certifications. The income caps are on the initial move-in. And so what you're certifying is that that person that moved into this unit met that threshold at move-in, and you're certifying that that same applicant is still in that unit. Any new tenants that come in have to meet that initial threshold. So what you're certifying is that those initial tenants that were qualified, that still live on the property, are still there, and they can make as much money. You're certifying that it's those people that are there. It's not that they're certifying an additional income level. So it's different than, again, it's just the initial move-in. Everything else can vary. The other thing about the reading from a preliminary application from the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, all the market studies, market revisions, all that has changed and is since that initial thing. The 80% units have been added in since that preliminary application and will be reflected in the final application that we've agreed to the agency. So anything that was on that preliminary application is just that. It was a preliminary app that was put in back in January. And we've worked on adjusting that with the market analysts, with the Housing Finance Agency over the last 3 months. So the latest versions of what I have presented is the reality. The prelim app is no longer relevant.
Apologize. I need to be sworn in. I apologize. I'm an attorney and I thought that we were represented on all matters. Yes, and thank you for your time. Jim Harrell, 2005 Caminos Drive, Raleigh, North Carolina, and procedurally, and it'd probably be better for staff to explain on the variance discussion, but so that you know, we did not, utilizing Section 42 tax credits, the way that process works would not allow for, and I do not know of anyone that's doing master plans. So because of the time and money that goes into it, I think that it would preclude development utilizing those credits. As far as other showings, it's consistent with the intent of the ordinance. Obviously, now it's I believe that we've shown it secure the public safety with our traffic study, and I certainly think it achieves substantial justice. So that's, but as far as we did not create that hardship, and again, I think that you would, on requiring a master plan in order to avoid that variance, I think that you would be eliminating these developments. Thank you. I apologize for the oversight. Those are the copies of the traffic assessment that we performed just for your reference. So I apologize for not getting those submitted.
You'll have a chance in just a minute. Am I gonna what? we're gonna take about a 5-minute recess so the board can have a chance to look at this, and we're gonna reconvene at 8:35.
Everyone looking at it right now.
I need to know about that, that's my.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The traffic on Wendell Boulevard's going down, it's only because people are trying to avoid Wendell Elementary School.
Can I ask you that? Okay. All right, we're back. Did you hear anything else from the applicant? Still with the applicant? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. This is sort of a closing statement, but the petitioner requests approval of the special use permit and the variance. We contend there has not been competent evidence offered by any experts in opposition to our petition. The only thing that was presented today was lay witness testimony. As the town attorney has already stated, and I stated earlier, sort of jumped to the gun earlier, lay witnesses are not allowed to testify regarding the increased traffic or how the property may affect the value of their property under the statute 160A. We believe there's a huge need for this project. As Mr. Gillette demonstrated, there's only a 7% capture rate. That's how much Wendell needs this project. Petitioner has been willing to be extremely flexible here. They've gone over and above what they needed to do. They've agreed to move buildings. Also, they've even done a traffic study. Traffic study shows there would not be any increased traffic that would affect the safety. So we contend that we've met the requirements for the variance, and we would request a special use permit be approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Last chance for opposition.
Hi, I just want to read this that came from the
Say your
housing.
name again one
Oh,
more
I'm
time.
sorry, I thought y'all knew me. Regina Harmon, 6616 Tails Branch Road, Wendell. Own 2 businesses in town, lived here for over 20-something years. And I just want to read this because, you know, you said that we had to have documentation and all that, but this is from the housinglink.org, subsidized housing /42, over the Section 42 tax credit program. I'm reading this because the gentleman come up here and said that after they get it, they don't ever have to do it again.
I don't really think that's relevant to this board's decision.
Okay, not a problem. I'm just asking, so.
That's the mayor's decision, but I don't think any of the tax credit information is relevant to the board's decision.
That's, I just wanted to rebut what he said, since what he said is different than what is on this sheet of paper. And that's it. That's the only reason I wanted to rebut it. But if I can't, I respect your decision.
Okay, we're good, thank you.
All
Ms.
right.
Harmon. Yes, sir.
Again, my name is Attorney Stefan Bowens. I'm here on behalf of Ms. Geraldine Herndon, who lives at 230 Church Street. And again, I would like to reiterate that there has been no additional evidence offered by the applicant that would afford this board the opportunity to move forward with the variance. And therefore, as such, we would respectfully request that the either A, the application be denied, or B, it be referred to the TRC committee as required under your current UDO. But in this case, we do not believe that the application can properly move forward under Chapter 160 or under the provisions of your own UDO provided in Section 15.17. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, I would also add that the applicant, or LaRue, actually owns all of the adjacent property and actually has a way of access off of Wendell Boulevard that the board could, if it so chose, to put a condition in the special use permit to require that their access point be from Wendell Boulevard. And in this case, presumably if they have to do a stub from an adjacent property, they would also have to, more than likely, they would use one of their adjacent properties as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, let's hear from staff. David? And I've got some, we want to hear from our town attorney as well. Go ahead.
So I'm available for questions. I'm not sure.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bergmark?
So I have one. Mr. Askew showed us some pictures, Jason, if you don't mind. So currently, Church Street is 2 lanes. Is parking allowed on the street?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have anything that prohibits it.
There's nothing that prohibits
So
it.
if this project or any other project went in on this tract of land, would this still be allowed? Would that be the access point to this project?
It would be an access point. I can't say conclusively whether or not there'd be another one, but it would be an access point, yes. And this project would not create a change in the parking standards for the existing Church Street.
Okay, so we talked about in the rezoning, the parking issue, well, the road issue there, and there was nothing, but I didn't realize this would be the access point to the neighborhood. with
At this
parking on
time,
both
that's
streets.
the only access to the
That's
to
the only current
development.
access point to the lot.
So it's basically one lane if people are parked on the street, one lane to get in and out, correct?
If they're parked on both sides.
Either that, or at some point, I could foresee us not allowing parking there because of that. I could see that being the natural evolution of that,
David,
which would impact those folks, you know.
this board retains the authority to control street parking, correct?
It certainly does. Or to control the ordinances that control it, yeah.
Right. I'm a private property rights person before I am anything else. But what I will say is the street is never considered private property. So I think part of alleviating any traffic concerns has to include that we're paving streets and then allowing them to become smaller by, for lack of better terms, not exercising our right to control the public right-of-way on the street. So if that's a concern, I'd say it rests completely on us because we have the authority to change it.
All right. Is that all from Mr. Bergmark? I'd like to hear from Mr. Cawley.
You want to close the public hearing?
Yeah. Public hearing's closed.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, I'm reviewing some of the TRC and UDO requirements in light of the testimony that's been given. And often the case with local governments, and you've seen it before, it comes to a matter of choosing your lawsuit. You had one threatened tonight, which I know is not, doesn't come across very well, but that's often the position you find yourselves in as a governing body, is which lawsuit do you want to defend? And in my opinion, having reviewed the UDO requirement, there is a clear requirement with multifamily buildings with more than 4 units that they go through a TRC review with a master plan and an environmental survey. And in my opinion, the board doesn't have the authority to waive or vary that requirement. So I don't think this permit application is ripe for a decision at this time. It could be denied for failure to meet the requirements, or it could be delayed to allow it time to go through the UDO required process.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cawley?
I got a motion. We're gonna be able to have cross-examination of others.
Public hearing's closed.
We literally roll people one at a time. There was no chance for me to, when I did try, I wasn't given the opportunity to ask Mr. Bowens the question.
Should have said something when Mr. Cawley just said to close the public hearing.
Even try to raise my hand. I know Mr. Bowens did it. Can I not execute my authority at this point to ask questions? I mean, is that not a thing? I was taking notes as we came up. Everyone was giving us a lot of information at really high speed, and as soon as they were done, they walked away. There was no chance for me to ask my question. And if we're making a decision on denial or referring to TRC, some of my questions are pertinent to that.
I think at this point, it would require, the board to agree to reopen the public hearing.
I'll just make a couple comments.
Make the
If I
motion.
can make comments, and we'll, with that.
Do you want the public hearing?
Jim, attorney, the process, if he wanted to reopen, would he make a motion to reopen the public hearing, and that would be
Get it on the
voted
floor.
or denied?
That would get it on the floor, yes.
All right, I just wanted to clarify what the process would be for the council, for the commissioner.
Make a motion to reopen the public hearing.
Okay. For motion to reopen the public hearing, all in favor?
Aye. Mr. Bowens, if you don't mind, just a question for you. I know last time, when we had a conversation about rezoning, there was, concern about I heard buffers, I heard, density, property line, what we're gonna see out the back door. Now I understand that there's been changes made to this one. The argument that you're making tonight was purely process, correct? And I haven't, one, I'm not an attorney, two, but you're making that argument. I felt like we didn't get to the special use permit part of we started and ended with the variance portion. Is that, I'm trying to achieve a goal of making sure I understand, A, what everyone's asking for, and B, what the future is. If sending this to a TRC committee alleviates those concerns, we've been advised that that's something that's likely. I didn't get to your part of, last time it seemed all density and special use, no variance concern. This time it seemed all variance, no special use concern. Did the special use concern still exist? And so, why not? Why?
As a practical matter, what I would say to you is that you never reached the special use permit the last time. That the last hearing was a hearing based solely on the map amendment request. And one of the things that we asked for with respect to the map amendment request was for the zoning under your authority. As we stated at the prior board meeting, the board had the authority to zone that property down to make it more consistent with the adjacent community, i.e. R3. The board chose not to do that. And in turn, you did have a motion for that. But for whatever reason, that motion failed and the board moved forward with voting non-unanimously to move forward with the map amendment as requested. And then tonight move forward with approving that map amendment. And it is our position that the residents of Church Street are entitled to fundamental fairness and due process. And that as a part of that, that does include procedural due process. And the mere fact that this variance and special use permit did not go through the appropriate process leads us to believe that the appropriate action for the board is to deny the variance and thereby deny the special use permit. Now, if the applicant chooses to bring a new application, so be it. But at this point, my client's position is that the board should move forward with denying the variance, and therefore you don't reach the issue of the special use permit. Thank you.
Let me ask it in a more direct manner then. So the moving of the buildings piece doesn't, I guess, I saw some, at least in my mind, good faith efforts tonight, and it seems like we're not addressing that. What we're being asked to address is the variance piece. Were you, like, one, I would have loved to have known about everything earlier, but that's the thing about these things. But two, would sending this to TRC satisfy? Because it seems like the skipping of the TRC and waiting for the TRC to come in later, and as I read it, everything else is contingent on the TRC. But if we send it to TRC, would that satisfy the concerns? Would that check all the boxes?
Not necessarily. Our position is that my clients are not in favor of the granting of the special use permit and not in favor of the issuance of the variance. There were other issues from our perspective with respect to the issue of the variance in and of itself, which we were not able to reach at the last meeting as it relates to notice of the variance, because the variance itself was buried in the application and was not part of the board agenda in and of itself. We would have contended and still do contend that the application itself was fundamentally flawed because it did not give, and the procedures for which moving forward with the special use permit went forward were fundamentally flawed, and therefore the board could not have effectively voted on them anyway. But having said that, we are where we are tonight, and for at least at this stage, our clients are not in agreement with the special use permit. Can I tell you that there have been discussions and communications with Attorney Harrell and myself and me going back and forth with my clients? Absolutely. And can I tell you in good faith we will continue to have those conversations? Absolutely. But can I tell you tonight that my client is in a position to say that they're going to be supportive of the special use permit? No, I can't tell you that.
That wasn't so much what I was asking. I appreciate what you said before. I wasn't asking you to weigh in on future things. I'd never asked you to do that. I was, I guess, trying to figure out what would satisfy it, and it now appears that denial is the only thing that would satisfy.
Well, our position is that the special use permit and the variance were inappropriately brought forward to this board, and therefore should be denied. I can't say any more than that.
Appreciate that. And my second question was from Mr. Askew. Can you, I think it's still up there. Last time we talked about it, and obviously we weren't allowed to talk about those things at that time, so I can now, so I want to ask. The creek portion, though, the same piece, moving any of that away from, it seems like, at least what we've seen tonight, moves some of that away. Does anything you've seen tonight remove any objection in your mind at all? As far as the creek, you had specific knowledge about the way that creek gets
Yeah,
its
and
water.
my main thing was the stormwater retention pond. It didn't move. They've scooted a few houses around coming in Church Street, moved some stuff around the backside.
Okay.
But what's catching the runoff of that one side of the apartment is directly where it was before. It did not move. And that was one of my main concerns with the zoning.
And my other question is, in reading, and I read through the deeds, y'all have had a piece of land there. what's prohibited the past from development here? Like what hasn't gone here before, and what would you see going there in the future?
As far as this parcel right here we're talking about, what has
Sure.
prevented it from being developed?
Right, I guess what I'm asking is there anything to go there? What would go there? If this is not an appropriate
I'd
use?
say the owner wanted too much money for it. I mean, if you want my honest opinion, that's what kept it get developed. I mean, it could have been developed at any time, the industry could have came in, he wants top dollar for it, that's his choice, I mean, it's his land. I mean, I didn't go out there and stake out a petition and go walk across it and tell him not to do anything. It's just, it's not feasible for what he wants for that land to do some other things. You gotta pack him in there tight for what he wants to do, to be able to afford to buy it.
And then, clarifying, because I took notes last time, and then I wanna make sure, the use of your family, the backside of that property, you said is residential as well as agricultural, you said working farm?
We working for him, yes, sir.
Okay, and how is that related to the tractor trailer piece?
We also have a trucking company as well.
Okay.
And I haul grain in and out from grain bins, you know, we have tractors, implements, equipment coming in and out that utilizes that road as well.
Understood. Well, that was.
Yeah, that's what we got coming in. We do have some tractor trailers and equipment that comes in and out, and also the businesses up the road do as well, for making daily deliveries.
Okay. All right, well, that was the other piece of the, closing the circle for me. Thank you.
You good?
Anyone else you'd like to talk to? Or anyone
Those
would
are
like
the
to
two
talk to?
questions that I wanted to ask.
Okay. No, reclose the public hearing now.
I have a couple motions.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to deny the variance, and, due to that, I also have a second motion, or do you want them one at a time?
Let's take them one at a time.
Okay, I have a motion to deny the variance.
All right, we have a motion to deny the variance. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I have some discussion on that motion also.
Okay, let's hear it.
The hearing's closed, and I'm not 100% certain on what constitutes expert testimony. And so I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I'm an expert in anything. But what I will say is we have a technical review committee, for a purpose. We already have a 84-unit apartment complex in Wendell that has one entrance and exit, and I can tell you that it is not easy to get in or out. When evacuations have been needed in the past, trying to get people out one exit while fire trucks go into other is not easy. The fact that there's only one entrance and exit off of this, for this entire complex, off of what basically amounts to an alley or a side street, I would really like to hear the technical review committee's opinion on this. I also was born and raised in Wendell, lived here my whole life, and I've seen this town grow also. Town's grown not necessarily by people who were born and raised here, it's by people who moved in. The issue of tax credits or low income is absolutely irrelevant to this entire discussion. The rents were shown were 3/4 of them are higher than what I pay in my mortgage on my house. So absolutely not germane to the discussion. My issue is, and I think an issue that would be well addressed to the technical review committee, is only one entrance in and out from multifamily residential located behind 30,000 gallons of propane, with only one way to enter and exit, only one way to get emergency vehicles in if you need to get residents out, the side parking and everything else. And even with the updated map plot, there's now a secondary part off to the side that is additionally only accessible by one street. I would like to hear what the technical review committee has to say about it before I say yes or no on to anything. And there are some other issues, I'm not sure this is the time to discuss, all the other issues, but they may come up later. But anyway, so that's why I made the motion, is to deny the variance, and we'll talk about special use permits later.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? Okay, so we have a motion to deny. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Do we need to take action on special use permit? You do.
Okay, let's hear it.
I make a motion to table special use permit, until such time as it has come back from the technical review committee.
Okay, so we have a motion to table the special use permit until it comes back from the TRC. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Is there I'm not on TRC, I don't know when TRC meets.
Technical review committee.
TRC,
Is it, when does it meet?
when's it meet?
Commissioner Carroll is the representative for the board to the
I was
TRC.
asking staff when it met.
Second Thursday of every month is the meeting day.
I guess what I'm saying is that we've now hit it seems like a roadblock that at least somebody should have caught. So, getting it to the TRC with all due diligence and speed would seem like the inappropriate action since, I don't know, it got to us with a variance that we then said we can't approve. So it seemed like there was no way that, I mean, I voted for denying the variance because the attorney said to vote for denying the variance. So whatever, making sure that this doesn't get kicked down the road so we can go ahead and address those concerns and let folks continue to talk back and forth, would be appreciated.
I would simply ask just for information's sake and to have it, TRC meets on the second Thursday of every month, is correct?
Well, if there's items to review, yes.
If there's,
For them
okay,
to
I
reason-
imagine there's something to review on May the 9th then, correct? That would be,
Correct, yes,
right? So that will be something on May the 9th, and are those meetings open to the public?
They are, although they're not open for public comment, they're for public viewing.
And those meetings are held where?
We typically have them here in our planning conference room, although depending on the public, we might need to move that.
I just wanted to make sure that this is all public knowledge. That's it. So, May the 9th, held somewhere, no public comment will be allowed.
I mean, there's no, yeah, they're not discussion items, 'cause it's not a public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
It starts at 9:30 in the morning. I don't know how much comment there'll be on this item, given the short timeline, but I can put it on the agenda and see what comments we get back. Normally, they have 30 days to review a new item.
Do you have what is required to be presented to the TRC?
We'd have to receive it. No, we don't have a master plan in hand.
And is there a deadline to receive that in advance of the TRC meeting?
So our application material calls for it, there is an application deadline that's 30 days prior to the next TRC meeting.
June it is.
So June.
So there should be, yeah, so naturally it would fall in the June meeting with the application and the master plan submitted prior to 30 days of that June date.
All right, let's move to item 6A. It's a facade grant request for number 1 North Main Street.
Big one?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Item 6A, facade grant request for 1 North Main Street. The town's being asked to review and take action on this expanded downtown facade grant application. Action could consist of approving or denying the facade grant application request. On January 11th, an application was submitted to the town planning department by Sigurd Westerland for property that he recently purchased at 1 North Main Street, requesting the downtown facade grant in the amount of $45,000. This application includes the removal of the existing metal siding on the corner building, which that portion of that work has occurred, as well as comprehensive exterior renovations to restore the building back to its kind of former historic appearance. This is located in the downtown mixed use or DMX district at the corner of Main Street and 3rd Street. The total estimated cost for the improvements is just over $100,000. Again, these are just the exterior improvements for removing the paneling. That portion was done just because there was no way to get cost estimates for the rest of the work without pulling that paneling off. The rest of the work has not been conducted. Replacement of the exterior windows and doors, cornice replacement and installation, masonry repair, and outdoor lighting improvements. This does not include a lot of money that's going into the interior improvements, but those improvements aren't eligible for the facade grant funds. So again, this is a request for $45,000 under the expanded facade grant program. It's based on a 50-50 match. The total match provided by the town through this expanded facade grant program would have to be approved through June 1st, 2019. May not exceed $45,000. That deadline was set in order to make sure that the money that we received, the $50,000 through NC Commerce, would be used according to their project deadlines for downtown revitalization projects. This could be applied for the remaining funds we have. $45,000 could be applied towards a single request, multiple requests at the sole discretion of this board. Grant approvals in excess of $10,000 per the program guidelines we set up are reserved for prominent downtown projects that will result in significant increased property valuation, job development, or substantial aesthetic improvements in a prominent location. This project does include eligible improvements and was deemed complete with project costs indicated and project details provided. The applicant has begun work which is permitted under the program guidelines. This is just a picture of before they pulled the metal siding off of the building. This is a picture of the historic structure, essentially is what they're working back towards, restoring it kind of back to this look and appearance. This is just to give you an idea of some of the exterior lightings. This is really the only thing that is being, quote, added rather than restored, with that and the cornice that they're putting back on the top edge of the building. There had been a question about that for the Appearance Commission, so I wanted to share that with you. In staff's opinion, that the proposed project meets the qualifications to exceed the $10,000 grant award, as it does include substantial aesthetic improvements and is in a very prominent location right at the center of our downtown. It's also the only request we've received for the downtown facade grant program, or expanded facade grant program, excuse me. And again, we want to ensure that we use all the funds that we've received, and that's why we set kind of a deadline for the applications through June 1st, 2019. At their April meeting, the Wendell Appearance Commission did recommend approval for the full amount, which is $45,000. That's all I have. I'd be happy to take questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Bergmark?
A couple.
Yeah.
David, just to be clear, these funds that you're saying we received, these are from the grant not the grant we received, but
They are from
Yes.
the North Carolina Department of Commerce. They're the remainder, the $50,000 after subtracting the $5,000
Okay.
for the legal work to establish a downtown event group.
And then is it normally protocol when we have these applications to have more of a formal, actually see the formal quotes from the work that's being done?
So they have to provide us the quotes, and I did receive the quotes.
Okay.
I didn't put those before you,
Okay.
but I can confirm that we have quotes from those professional contractors in those dollar amounts.
Okay, I just want to make sure that wasn't the applicants' estimations or anything? Okay.
Correct, yes, we did wait, and that's part of the reason why there was a delay going to the Appearance Commission to this board. You know, they originally submitted back in January, we were waiting for those quotes to come in.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So that initial pot of money wasn't a recurring pot of money, it was a one-time allocation from the General Assembly to Commerce to pass on to Wendell. Do we have thoughts on Commerce, either, the facade grant program was cut out 2 budgets ago, brought back last budget, then this money used, do we have an idea moving forward how we will continue such a program? Has Commerce shown us anything on? It seems like we're about to spend the piggy bank, and I guess what I'm asking is, short of me having a conversation with Senator Barefoot again, and Senator Barefoot is no longer senator in the state, funding is going to have to come from outside. We don't have some magical new commerce program. I think the best thing that's come out of this entire situation is the relationship we have with the Department of Commerce now. I guess what I'm asking is, Commerce would recommend us doing this?
Commerce has told us that the town is free to use the money as it sees fit to improve downtown. They did review our facade, how we intended to use the money. This is consistent with that use. A little bird might tell you that you'll see a town-funded facade grant at a lower amount in a recommended budget.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
And then, David, what was the deadline from the NC Department of Commerce? Was it July 1?
I should have that before me. No, so we have through, I believe it's next fiscal year to spend all the funds. We set our deadline for application through June 1st because we had a fallback. If we did not receive facade grant funds, we were gonna, or at least we were looking at potentially doing some downtown electrical improvements, but it was the, general thought of the board that if we could do it through this use, that would be preferred, so we wanted to set that up as the initial strategy, and then only use the other one as a fallback.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
Am I the only one that liked the siding? Yes. I thought it was a modernist beacon in downtown. I hate that it had fallen in disrepair, but I liked it. I also like what this is going back to. But I thought it was interesting, and I thought it added a focal point.
Have mercy. All right, well, thank you. Any other comments? Somebody say something fast.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to make a motion to approve the facade grant request at 1 North Main Street as proposed.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to approve the facade grant application for number 1 North Main Street. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Item 6B is update on citizen advisory boards. We're going to hear from our new clerk tonight.
Okay, I just wanted to let the board know that these are the applications attached in your agenda packets that have been received to date for boards with current vacancies. The board is not requested to take action this evening. Open recruitment will be launched tomorrow, April 23rd, and the deadline will be May 23rd. Open recruitment information will come back at the first June meeting. And do you want to take action at your next meeting for the vacancies, or do you want to wait until the June meeting to take care of everything?
So what you're looking for is whether or not we'd like to go ahead and fill the vacancies now, that we have 4 vacancies, I believe, or wait and do them all at one time, since we're getting ready to start our open recruitment and do them at one time. That's what you want to know?
Yes.
Okay, does anybody have any thoughts about that? Honestly, I think we might ought to lump it all together into one at this point, because it's simplicity for everyone involved, if y'all are in agreement with that.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner, I'm sorry.
If we could, reach out to all sitting members of the board that may be having a term expiring, we've, in the past, sometimes missed those, and, want to make sure that everybody knows that their term's about to expire and that they should reapply, 'cause that,
Okay.
Yeah. I think,
I have one clarification today. On the planning board appointments, it says one in-town member and one ETJ member, both terms expire in June 2020. The planning department received population statistics from the county, and there are statutory requirements about representation between planning board and ETJ.
do we need that?
Before y'all take action on that, I just want to make sure that planning staff and the attorney go through those numbers and that it's really 1 and 1 and it hasn't changed with the increase of population in the town.
Okay, well, that's that much more reason to kind of hold on just a minute.
Given everything else tonight, I just want to caution y'all that I appreciate the extra time to be able to review that and make.
And you're right, it is one, I had a Post-it note stuck over that ETJ part, so it's 5 empty ones right now. But with it getting ready to start tomorrow, and by the time they would all meet again, we'd be right within the, I agree, I think it is something to wait, just for efficiency purposes, if everyone is in agreement with that. All right. All right, I think too, in the past, the staff liaison to the various citizen boards has reminded them at their meetings of whose term was getting ready to expire, who was eligible to reapply. Some people might be no longer eligible to reapply, and I think they do go over that, but I agree with Commissioner Joyner, we need to make sure everybody knows that they're about to expire, and if they have an option to reapply, if they choose.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item 6C is a discussion and decision on lease for property located at 122 West 2nd Street as a museum by the Wendell Historical Society.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. As directed by the Commission after purchase of the property, staff started at some point thereafter drafting a lease in cooperation and coordination with the Wendell Historic Society. In your packet, you have a draft lease. I will add that the Wendell Historic Society met Thursday evening and had a couple what staff consider friendly amendments that are left at your table in front of you that are highlighted. I'll review those as I go through the highlights of the lease document, but I would request that the Commission approve the lease as amended this evening to reflect those changes. The lease before you is effectively a 20-year lease. It's a 5-year lease with 3 successive renewals. The rent is set for $1 per year in that lease. That I'm sure there's a legal reason for having some due consideration being given.
And make sure you get the dollar every year.
Yeah.
We'll properly account for it with the audit. The Wendell Historic Society accepts the structure as is in the lease for establishing and operating a public museum that would promote the town's history. With that, they can offer any accessory customary uses associated with that. I know they'd appreciate if I directly mentioned gift shop and for fundraising as well for that use. The Historic Society will provide an annual maintenance plan and proof of regular maintenance to the town. The Historic Society is responsible for all repairs and maintenance. They take on even what typically the landlord would take on because the town is providing the property and only receiving $1 in rent. One of the mutually agreed to changes is in this section that both parties would mutually agree to license inspectors and tradespeople to do the work. So both parties get to have input on who's selected, not just one party. They're responsible for all utilities, mowing, and services for the premises, and to keep the property in good, clean, and sanitary condition. Any alterations or improvements to the premises are the responsibility of Wendell Historic Society. They would seek prior written approval, which could be by email from the town manager. If they don't agree with what the town manager tells them, they can appeal that decision to the Board of Commissioners. The Historic Society is required to maintain insurance on the property and name the town as an additional insured. This is one of those requirements. I put in a low number. The attorney recommended a high number. The Historic Society said that the number recommended, $1 million per occurrence, is what their current insurance is on the post office building, and so the request is to set it at the $1 million with the amendment. Early termination of the lease is allowed by either party with due notices provided in the lease. This allows opportunities if some other use of the overall property came before the town still owns the property and is able to move forward with the property. In the event that the town does decide to move forward with another use of the property, the lease does provide 3 options for the Historic Society. One of those options would be to offer to buy that portion of the premises if it wasn't needed for what the town had in mind, at the price that the town paid for it. So we'd get a clawback on the town funds expended. The second option is to relocate the structure. If our use doesn't require the structure, they could take that structure and relocate it to another property and premises of their choice and purchase at their expense. The third option, it would be to participate in an agreement. If the use that's coming on the property could involve an extension or use of a history museum, then they could participate in that process as well. We tried to maintain as much flexibility both for the Historic Society to maintain a museum and for the town for the use of its property. The Historic Society doesn't occupy the premises until the lease conditions are met. They've already started providing that in good faith and are well on their way to that. So we anticipate them assuming occupation of the property shortly. They do have to follow the law, maintain the property consistent with legal requirements, and obtain all permits necessary to do any improvements on the property. Town maintains ownership, I'll say that again, with the ability to consider other uses in the future as needed. And with that, I'd recommend the condition to approve the lease with the amendments requested by the Historic Society after I have the opportunity to answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody have any questions for the manager?
And members of the Historic Society, Hugh's right behind me. Okay. No, Mr. Hennett and a couple others are here.
They're all over in here, I see them.
Yeah, I see them hiding around. Does you have any questions for the staff of the Historic Society?
Are there any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the lease of 122 Second Street to the Wendell Historical Society for the terms and conditions stated, including all newly amended areas that were agreed upon by both parties.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to approve the lease. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Just that if the Historical Society needs anybody to cover the next 20 years, call me, I'll take care of the lease.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank y'all.
Great moments in philanthropy right there. Everyone has to start somewhere, boy. Yeah, that's true.
Item 7A is update on board committees by town board members. The East Wake Seniors Center Auxiliary, Commissioner Myrick.
Yes, the East Wake Senior Center met last week. I was unable to attend, with the holiday on Friday and today. I have not been able to make contact, but I will provide a report at our next meeting.
Okay. I went to Campo last week. We received the Triangle Transportation Demand Management Program update by Triangle J, Council of Governments. Their aim and their programming is to reduce reliance on single occupancy vehicles for travel by encouraging car and van pooling and public transportation and so forth. They gave us results about a 10-year mark. I have specifics about all that if anybody's interested in some of the details. We also received an update on community funding area program for fiscal year 2019 and 2020, and project selection, let's see. There actually may be a couple things that we'll be interested in the future, so we'll keep an eye out for that kind of thing. This is a brand-new program. We might not be quite ready for it yet, but we will be soon. We approved the sub-allocation of fiscal year 2019 of split allocation of funding. Raleigh has been designated by the federal government to allocate all these funds. And we discussed the draft 2020 to 2029 STIP revision that was presented, and funding scenarios were discussed with input from the NCDOT, and asked to determine what order to do things in now, and that decision was made. We received an update regarding federal rescission, received an update on 3 current sources of funds and how close they are to potentially being lost. Again, I've got additional information about that if anyone's interested. And we received information about the 2018-2027 Transportation Improvement Plan Amendment Number 7. You know, I've told y'all we approve things, and then every month we go back and we amend it, all of it. So, and there were also a few other just light project updates and staff reports. And I've got some handouts and things if anyone's interested that I brought, if you have any questions about that. All right, so Commissioners' reports. Let's start with Commissioner Joyner.
Nothing tonight, Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Boyette.
Go Canes.
Commissioner Myrick.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Commissioner Lutz.
I'll just have one thing, and this is kind of more, I guess, for staff, and I'm maybe just being a little bit weird and old-fashioned, but when we have applicants who are getting grants or requesting things, I think it'd be in really good taste if they were here. To grant, to grant somebody $45,000, I think it'd be good if they would at least be here to speak on their behalf. So, that's just me. That's all.
It'd be a good thing to recommend in the future. Real briefly, reminder, we already discussed it tonight, that our Citizen Board recruitment starts tomorrow and wraps up on May 23rd, so it's open for a month. We urge everybody to please apply. We always are in need of people to fill these spots, and it's a way to get involved in your community, and we sort of appreciate your service, so encourage people to do that. Our opening day at the park is coming up on Saturday, April 27th. Public Safety Day is May 4th. Spring into the Arts is May 11th. This is a busy time here in the spring here in Wendell. And also May 2nd is National Day of Prayer, which we heard earlier. Real quickly, I wanted to thank the Passage Church and the Wendell Baptist Church. The Easter egg hunt was outstanding. Everybody had a lot of fun. And also I want to thank the Public Works and the police and the Parks and Rec folks, because everybody, these things are all hands on deck. So we appreciate your efforts. And just real quickly, when the Hurricanes were mentioned, I pulled up the score, and they're winning 3-2 with 9 minutes and 26 seconds left in the third. So that's great news. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we're adjourned.
Yeah, no,